Sheelah Kolhatkar is a features editor and national correspondent at Bloomberg Businessweek. Sheelah, welcome to Democracy Now! First, explain how you got into this super PAC fundraiser.
It was not something I expected or imagined would happen, but I went down to the Republican convention. I cover Wall Street, among other things, for Bloomberg Businessweek. And I'm very interested in the intersection of Wall Street and politics. So, of course, the RNC is where that world collides. And I got down there to do sort of general reporting on some longer-term pieces I'm working on. And, of course, was aware from my past coverage of conventions that the convention is never really about what's going on in the convention hall, the speeches, all that hoopla. That's really just a sideshow. And the real convention is the parallel convention that's going on in the sort of private dining rooms and clubs and hotels all around Tampa. And that is where the strategists like Karl Rove are meeting with the money, the business men mostly who are increasingly funding this campaign. So unexpectedly, I was invited to this Karl Rove event. I showed up there. I had no idea what it was, what to expect. Once I was inside, it started to become clear to me that this was actually something that was very revealing about the way the election is going, who's increasingly in control of it. And, all I could do at that point was sit there and take it in.
So tell us, you went into the Tampa Club and tell us what this club is, and then just describe the scene for us.
Sure. Well, the Tampa Club, I don't know a lot about the Tampa Club. It's in downtown Tampa. It's a very discreet little enclave in a very discreetly marked building. I found myself inside a dining room where there was a lovely breakfast buffet laid out, scrambled eggs and fruit and coffee. And people were mingling, and Karl was greeting guests, and there were a dozen or so round tables in a room with 10 seats at each, and people sort of sat down with their plates. And after the chit-chat ended, the American Crossroads staff took to the podium, and they sort of laid out what they wanted to do. They wanted to update these attendees, the top donors to American Crossroads, billionaire hedge fund managers, industrialists, financiers, people who have been pouring money into Rove's organization to influence the election. They wanted to convey to those people that money has been well spent. It's been effective. They wanted to explain to them what they've been doing with it, what their strategy has been, and of course, probably the most important aspect of the whole meeting, they wanted to ask for more money because they said, well, we still have a lot of work to do. Their budget is around $300 million for this cycle. They have raised around $200 million of that. They said that they have another $50 million in pledges, although that's not quite in the bank yet. So they wanted to make clear to the folks present that they still need more money, that there's a lot more that they want to do.
And explain what American Crossroads is, Sheelah.
Sure. Well, as has been covered by my own magazine, by Paul Barrett and others, when Karl Rove left Washington, he figured out another way to make himself relevant to the political landscape. He started a super PAC called American Crossroads. This was about 2 years ago that he started this organization. It can raise unlimited donations from corporations and individuals, and can use that money to try to influence voters and to advocate directly for candidates. He also started a sister organization called Crossroads GPS, which is a social welfare, so-called social welfare organization, nonprofit that is meant to educate the public on issues. And that organization is not supposed to engage primarily in political activity. But one interesting thing that has been noted elsewhere and that I, of course, observed during this breakfast is that the two are effectively the same. The management is the same. The letterhead on all the materials handed out at the breakfast, was the same. There were forms for donations for both American Crossroads, the Super PAC, and Crossroads GPS. The the social welfare organization were handed out to everyone there with instructions on how to wire money to each of them. You know, there was material explaining what the missions are of both organizations, and they're very, very similar. So, you know, one thing that's clear to everyone is that the you know, the FEC laws that are meant to create distinctions between these types of organizations are wobbly and are not necessarily being you know, paid much attention to by the people involved in this area.
So Karl Rove began to address the group, joined by Haley Barbour, the former Mississippi governor.
Yes, so Rove and Barbour are both top advisors to American Crossroads. The CEO of the organization is named Stephen Law. And Law explained, well, these are our two sort of big strategic brains who are helping direct everything that we do. And he said that neither of them are drawing a salary from American Crossroads. They are doing this out of the goodness of their hearts. They're doing it because they think it's really important and because they care. And they then proceeded to lay out, you know, in sort of a back and forth fashion, what their strategy is for dealing with this election and for getting Romney into office. And, you know, Rove sort of focused on the state-by-state intrigue, the data, the political dynamic in each race. He has sort of an encyclopedic knowledge of, you know, every region in the entire country and what the dynamics are there. And he explained to the group that they had conducted extensive focus group testing and they had amassed a lot of data and that they were sharing all this data and they were sort of sharing these focus groups with the other outside fundraising organizations such as Americans for Prosperity, the Koch brothers groups, and others. So out of all this research, they had created a very specific picture of the type of voter that they need to reach in order to tip the election in Mitt Romney's favor. They said that this is somebody who probably voted for Barack Obama the last time, who actually likes him, even if they don't necessarily like a lot of the things that have happened under Obama's presidency. Maybe they're hurting economically. But it's a very small group of people who fall into this camp. And at one point, Stephen Law asked Rove, well, listen, when can we take the gloves off? When can the campaign get more pointed and more personal? You know, a lot of people think that's more effective. And Rove said, actually, that is not the strategy that's going to work. We need to be respectful. We need to sort of focus on the issues at hand. If we call Obama a socialist or we call him a left-winger or, you know, say he's a bad person, these voters we're trying to reach will sort of recoil from that. So, you know, their whole plan is to speak in a very clear, you know, almost neutral tone as they would present it and not get nasty and personal.
The races that they felt were critical, Sheelah Kolhatkar, that they are focusing on around the country, they've singled out how many?
Well, Rove spent a lot of time talking about the presidential race, but of course, the whole thing lives or dies on the Senate. And for either party, the Senate is crucial. If Obama wins the presidential election, but the Democrats lose the Senate, Obama's going to be in a very tough position. He will not be able to really do anything. If Mitt Romney becomes president, but the Republicans do not gain control of the Senate, he will not be able to repeal Obamacare, which they all agree is their sort of top priority, the first thing he's going to do. And of course, the ultimate Republican goal is to have Romney in office and to you know, take a majority of the Senate and maintain their majority in the House, where they, you know, and they could really do most everything they want, which is a nightmare scenario for Democrats. So a lot of this breakfast was spent dissecting Senate races, and Rove went through maybe 14 or 15 different ones. He pointed out that the Republicans have 47 seats now. He feels concerned that they could lose 2. And that means they need at least 6 to, you know, to reach 51. And there were, you know, a number of interesting examples he went into. You know, Maine is one where they're feeling very, very concerned. Olympia Snowe is retiring. Rove pointed out that she has money left over that she is not planning to pass along to the Republican in Maine. She's planning to use it for philanthropic activity. So he urged the donors in the room to call her and ask for their money back and to give it to Charlie Summers, who's the Republican candidate running there, who Rove sort of lavished praise on. You know, he mentioned Nebraska and North Dakota as states where they feel pretty positive about their chances. And he talked about Ohio. That's a state where a very large amount of outside money has been pouring in. It might be number one in terms of outside money coming in and funding advertisements there. And Rove specifically mentioned that he'd had a call from an anonymous benefactor who did not come from Ohio, who came from another state, but who was just very interested and wanted to donate half of their $6 million budget in the state. So the condition was it had to be a matching challenge.
Brown?
Yes, exactly. This donor was a big fan of Josh Mandel, who's running against Brown. So Rove mentioned that the owner of the Cincinnati Reds baseball team was helping him raise that money. And they are just pounding away in Ohio with TV ads. So, you know, a lot of what he talked about was television advertising, but they mentioned as well that they are preparing phone and mail programs in addition to the ads. It doesn't sound like those have been unleashed yet, but that is part of what they have in their arsenal. And
Rubio, Marco Rubio in Florida, where, of course, the Republican convention was held, who is running as well.
Yes, Rubio came in. He made a brief sort of speech to the group as sort of an intro warm-up act to Rove and Haley Barbour. And Rubio is an interesting case. He's a superstar of the GOP. He was. He would go on to introduce Mitt Romney later that night at the convention, and he stood before the group and he explained to them why American Crossroads and Crossroads GPS were really important, and he used himself as an example. He said that early in his career in 2009 he was preparing to run for Senate. He was a long shot. No one thought he could win. And Rove singled him out as someone with great potential and sent him a check. And he said throughout his campaign, he noticed Crossroads GPS ads playing on TV that were defining the issues in a very clear way that he felt were helpful to him. He, of course, pointed out that, we didn't coordinate with them, of course, because by election law, that's not allowed. But he said this made a huge difference. And then he said to the men in the room, you know, you may feel some shame about what you're doing, giving money to this sort of group. The press will try to shame you, but in fact, this is patriotic. He made a point of saying he doesn't think Obama is a bad person. He just feels that Obama is sort of quashing the entrepreneurial spirit of the American dream. And he thought it was really important to continue to give money to fund these efforts. And of course, he closed his talk with a little joke about whether or not he broke any laws. And this was something else that was sort of interesting about this unscripted environment. There were a lot of sort of gallows humor about FEC laws. Even American Crossroads as general counsel was introduced as the guy who keeps us out of orange jumpsuits. So, you know, I thought that was very revealing as well.
I want to just clarify that Marco Rubio is not running for his Senate seat since he won in 2010, but he certainly is a headliner for other races around the country. Finally, Sheelah Kolhatkar, let's get to Missouri, the race where Claire McCaskill, until 2 weeks ago, was actually neck and neck, or maybe even behind the incumbent senator, as she is being challenged by Todd Akin. So if you could finally talk about what Karl Rove had to say about Todd Akin, who refused to step down. Will you tell us the story and the context for people who may have been on another planet when this controversy came out a few weeks ago?
Sure. Well, Akin, in various places, has made some very controversial comments about rape, and he said, in the case of a quote-unquote legitimate rape, it's unlikely that a woman will get pregnant. So, therefore, there was no need for a rape exception to any sort of law outlawing abortion. Understandably, people got very upset and outraged by this rather preposterous assertion on his part, and Rove expressed extreme frustration with Akin. He made a joke that has gotten a lot of attention about how, he wants Akin out. We should sink Todd Akin, he said. If his dead body shows up, don't come looking for me. He was obviously joking, but it does speak to how strongly he feels about this. He said that they have until the 25th of September to kind of convince Akin to leave the race, because basically as long as he stays in there, Claire McCaskill has a much stronger chance of winning, and she was in serious jeopardy before this whole scandal erupted. Rove then listed off a handful of people who are interested in his seat, a spot on the ticket, if he actually does leave, including a former senator of Missouri, Jack Danforth, who specifically told Rove that the selection of Paul Ryan as Mitt Romney's running mate was actually what galvanized him, because he said, well, this indicates to me that Romney is really serious about tackling entitlements and entitlement reform, so I want to get in on that. So there's this whole group of people sort of champing at the bit to take over Akin's spot, and Akin so far is refusing to buckle, even though all of his financial support from the Republican committee, from outside groups, has all been withdrawn and redeployed to other states where they feel that they have a better shot.
Sheelah Kolhatkar, I want to thank you very much for being with us. She's the features editor and national correspondent at Bloomberg Businessweek, and we will link to your article at democracynow.org. She got into that meeting of Karl Rove at the Tampa Club. The piece is called Inside Karl Rove's Billionaire Fundraiser.